Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
You know what's the most painful thing about being a Phillies fan right now? It's not that we're bad. It's that we're stuck in this awful middle ground where we're good enough to make the playoffs, but not good enough to win anything. And there's no clear path to getting better. We're trapped. We're locked into massive contracts with aging players. We have zero farm system. We have no financial flexibility. And every year that passes, our championship window gets smaller while our problems get bigger. And at some point, we need to have an honest conversation that nobody in Philadelphia wants to have. Should we just blow this thing up and rebuild? I know that sounds insane. I know we just made the playoffs. I know we have Bryce Harper and we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in this core. But sometimes the smartest move is admitting defeat, cutting your losses, and starting over before things get even worse. Because that's where we're headed. We're not getting better. We're getting older and more expensive with less flexibility and fewer options. 3 years from now, we're going to be a disaster. We'll have all these declining veterans on unmovable contracts, no young talent to build around, and a fan base that wasted an entire decade watching a team that was perpetually close but never good enough. Is that really better than ripping the Band-Aid off now and rebuilding the right way? Let's be brutally honest about what this roster is. We have a bunch of guys in their 30s making huge money who haven't proven they can win when it matters. 2 straight playoff failures, a World Series appearance that ended in disappointment. This group has had multiple chances and they've failed every time. At what point do we stop pretending that running it back one more time is going to produce different results? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different outcomes. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're running it back with the same core, the same flaws, the same problems, just hoping that somehow this year will be different. The financial situation alone should terrify everyone. We're paying Bryce Harper $27 million per year through 2031. Trea Turner gets paid through 2033. Nick Castellanos is here until 2027. Zach Wheeler until 2027. Kyle Schwarber until 2026. We're locked into massive money for aging players with absolutely zero flexibility to improve around them. And here's the thing, those contracts are only going to get worse. Harper's going to be 39 when his deal ends. Turner will be 40. These guys are going to be declining or completely washed for half of their remaining contracts, and we're going to be stuck paying them while trying to compete. Yet that's not a championship window. That's organizational purgatory. A rebuild would actually give us a path forward. Trade Harper while he still has value. Someone will take that contract for a franchise player, even at his age. Trade Turner to a contender desperate for a shortstop. Move Wheeler to a team that needs an ace. Castellanos, Schwarber, even JT Realmuto, if anyone will take him. Blow it up. Get prospects. Get young, controllable talent. Restock the farm system that Dombrowski completely gutted. Yes, it'll hurt. Yes, we'll be bad for 2 or 3 years. But then we'd actually have a foundation to build on instead of this crumbling structure we're currently propping up with duct tape and denial. Look at what the Astros did. They bottomed out, they rebuilt the right way, and they won multiple championships. Look at the Braves. They went through a painful rebuild, and now they're a dynasty. Even the Phillies themselves know how this works. We tanked, we built through the draft, we developed young talent, and we were supposed to have a sustained window of contention. But Dombrowski came in and mortgaged all of that for a short-term push that didn't work. Now we're right back where we started, except older and more expensive with no prospect depth. We can either accept another decade of mediocrity or we can make the hard choice and rebuild properly. The farm system is so bad that rebuilding is almost necessary just to survive. We have nothing. No top prospects, no impact talent in the minors, no pipeline of young players ready to contribute. When our expensive veterans decline, and they will, we'll have nobody to replace them with. We'll be forced to sign more expensive free agents to plug holes, which we can't afford to do because we're already maxed out. It's a death spiral. The only way to break the cycle is to trade our valuable assets now while they still have value and actually rebuild organizational depth. Think about the next 5 years if we don't rebuild. Year 1, we make the playoffs and lose early. Year 2, we barely make the playoffs or miss entirely as the core ages poorly. Year 3, we're definitely missing the playoffs and the wheels are coming off. Year 4 and 5, we're a bad team paying massive money to declining veterans with no path back to contention. That's our future if we stay the course. Now compare that to rebuilding. Year 1 and 2 are rough. Year 3, we start seeing young players contribute. Year 4, we're competitive. Year 5, we're contending again with a young, cost-controlled core and a decade-long window. Which path actually makes more sense? The division is another reason to consider rebuilding. The Braves are going to dominate for years. They're younger, they're better, they're smarter. We're not catching them with this roster. The Mets just spent $600 million and are going to be monsters. We're third in a 3-team race at best, and that's not changing. Why keep banging our heads against that wall? Why not step back, let them fight it out, and rebuild for when their windows close? It's strategic. It's smart. It's the kind of long-term thinking that actually builds sustainable winners. The sunk cost fallacy is killing us. We've invested so much money, so much time, so much energy into this core that we can't admit it's not working. But that's exactly when you need to cut your losses. The money is already spent. The contracts are already signed. Doubling down and hoping things improve isn't strategy. It's desperation. The brave move, the smart move, is admitting we bet on the wrong horses and starting over before we waste more years and more resources on a flawed foundation. I know ownership would never do it. Middleton wants to win now. He doesn't have the patience for a rebuild. He wants to compete every year, even if we're not actually good enough to win anything. But that's ego talking, not logic. A real owner who cared about long-term success would recognize that sometimes you have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. Sometimes you have to endure short-term pain for long-term gain. But instead, we're going to keep pretending we're contenders, keep running it back with the same flawed roster, keep failing in October until the whole thing collapses and we're forced into a rebuild anyway, except with less value to trade and more bad contracts to absorb. The alternative is what? Hope that somehow our 32 and 33-year-olds suddenly start producing at MVP levels? Hope that our bottom-ranked farm system magically develops impact talent? Hope that our maxed-out payroll somehow finds room for the upgrades we desperately need? That's not a plan. That's fantasy. We don't have a realistic path to a championship with this roster construction. We just don't. And the longer we pretend otherwise, the worse our situation becomes. Here's the reality that Phillies fans need to accept. This championship window is closed. Not closing, closed. We had our shot, we missed, and now we're on the wrong side of the aging curve with no way to meaningfully improve. We can either waste the next 5 years watching this slow decline while lying to ourselves about being contenders, or we can make the hard call right now, trade our assets while they still have value, and build something sustainable for the next decade. It's not the fun answer. It's not the answer fans want to hear, but it's the right answer. The smart teams aren't afraid to rebuild when the situation demands it. The stupid teams are the ones who cling to mediocrity because they're too scared or too proud to admit they need to start over. I'm not saying this is what will happen. I'm not even saying it's what should happen, but it's a conversation we need to be having. Well, when does running it back become organizational malpractice? When do we admit that incremental changes aren't going to fix fundamental flaws? When do we accept that sometimes the only way forward is to go backward first? Those are questions the front office should be asking right now instead of blindly committing to another year of the same failed approach. Because if we're being honest, truly honest, we all know how this story ends if we don't change course. And it doesn't end with a championship parade.